Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
It's Friday, July 12, 2024. I'm Candace Kelly, sitting in for Roland Martin, who is taking a much-needed day off. Here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Joe Biden said he's not jumping out of the presidential race. We'll talk to California Congresswoman Maxine Waters about why she is standing with Biden. And the day after, a Wisconsin family buried a Black man pinned down by hotel security. The Milwaukee police recommended murder charges be filed on four of the people who killed Devontaye Mitchell. Civil Rights Attorney Ben Crump will be here with the details about the case. And former New York mayor and Trump loyalist Rudy Giuliani's bankruptcy case is dismissed. This paves the way for the two Black Georgia election workers to collect on their multi-million-dollar judgment. And Florida A&M University will soon be looking for a new president. And finally, in tonight's Education Matters segment, we'll talk to the founder of Taylor D Kids TV, an educator whose passion for teaching led her to create an online academy for preschoolers and elementary school kids. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Thursday, President Joe Biden made it clear that the only way he would not drop out of the 2024 presidential election was if his team told him he could not win. In his unscripted press conference, the 81-year-old spoke and answered questions for nearly an hour. Biden told Americans he was the most qualified person to run for president and that we can't afford to lose what we've done. Now, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries wrote to his colleagues that he met with Biden to discuss his caucus members' conclusions about the path forward amid the president's embattled re-election campaign. Several Democrats on Capitol Hill have publicly called on him to step aside, but others, like my next guest, are supporting the president. Joining me now on the phone is California Congresswoman Maxine Waters. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
You're absolutely welcome, and I'm delighted to be with you. And it's so important that you're giving us the opportunity to talk about what's going on during this election time with Biden and with Trump. I'm ready to go.
Right. And certainly you are ready to go, and you have been ready to go quite a while in terms of your unwavering support for the president. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes. People think that we're not hearing something or not seeing something because we do see a lot of headlines about people perhaps privately asking about his health and what he's going through. Can you tell us anything about what's going on behind the scenes that might be a lot different from the narrative that's out there?
I don't know how much different it is, but I can tell you this. There has been a decision by some that they are not going to support him. And the reason that they give he's too old, he's not capable, that something may be wrong mentally, on and on and on. Whatever the reasons are, there is a plot, and it is being organized to try and get this president to so-called step aside. And I had a talk with some young people in Chicago today about stepping aside. And I was reminded, and we discussed it a lot, that step aside simply means that the president will be president up until January. They're not saying resign. They're not saying get out of the presidency, because if he did, Kamala would automatically become the president. She's the vice president. And if the president resigns or something happens to them where they cannot perform their duties, that's what the vice president does. The vice president takes over. But in this plot that's going on, there is an attempt to get him to step aside and not resign because they would rather we lose the ability for Kamala to be president or even to remain vice president. And so it's a lot of tricks going on. But anyhow, you take a look at the number of people in the House of Representatives. I think it's up to about 19 now. And television keeps saying that, there's a huge call to make him step aside, to get him to step aside. But 19 out of 213 is not huge. And what you see are, members, most of them, I think, maybe believe that he cannot perform his duties, that somehow he won't be able to beat Trump. I don't know what they think, but something is going on. And I support Biden staying. He is our Democratic nominee. He won in the primaries, which makes him our nominee. And we should get behind him, and we should work with him, and we should ensure that he has the opportunity to get on that campaign trail and beat Trump the way he has already done. He beat him before, he can beat him again.
Now, Congresswoman, certainly this has been an interesting process so far in terms of this campaign, beginning with what happened on June 27th with that early debate. And the president has done many things in order to try to make up for that or show that he is the one to be chosen. What do you think are the next steps in terms of what he should do on the campaign trail to make sure that people are behind him? Just strategy-wise, what are we going to see?
Well, absolutely. And he's committed to staying out there, going to all of our frontline states, making speeches, explaining his public policy. But I think that in addition to what he's doing, that the secretaries, the appointees, all of those people who are carrying out his strategies should be out on the campaign trail also. And I do believe that all of the members of the House of Representatives need to do a better job of explaining the policies, how they work, what he has accomplished, what it means to have the lowest unemployment that we have had for many, many years, what it means to have an infrastructure program that creates contracts and jobs and opens up opportunities for minorities to be involved in procurement in the ways that they have not been involved historically. He is good on everything from climate change to reproductive rights to support for small businesses, doing everything that was needed during COVID to make sure that the frontline workers had everything that they need to be protected, like the nurses and the doctors, and making sure that they get the vaccines into minority communities because they had not been doing it before. Trump had told us just to drink some bleach. And so the comparison, there's no comparison. I mean, Biden is an honorable, upright man. Trump is a liar. He's deceptive, he's destructive, and he's divisive.
I wanted to jump in and talk about the vice president for a moment, just in terms of positioning her so that more people will recognize what she has been doing. Many have been trying to make the argument that she has been doing quite a bit, but we haven't heard about it. And I'm wondering what you can let us in on in terms of what's going on behind closed doors to find out what is going to happen with her positioning and how she's positioning herself right now on this election campaign.
Well, first of all, as the vice president, she's running as a team with Biden. They are a team. They're running together, do not tend to be separated. She's been out on the campaign trail and has attracted a lot of support from women, talking about reproductive rights, women's rights. She's been excellent on those issues. She also has been excellent on dealing with small and minority businesses and education and all of these issues. Some people don't pay attention to the issue unless it's an issue that they care about. Well, if you care about health care, if you care about not only contracting and the opportunities for people to have jobs and positions that they've not had before, like diversity and inclusion, then you know what she's been saying and what she's been doing, and she's going to keep on doing that. Last night she was on international policy, talking about what is going on with Ukraine. And so she's well qualified. She's well equipped to do what needs to be done. She's been an asset to Biden, and the two of them working together have kept their promises.
I want to end on this question. George Clooney in his op-ed in the New York Times, I'm sure you have something to say to him about staying in his lane. And I just wanted to give you the opportunity to speak to the George Clooneys of the world who are making their opinions be known in a big fashion.
Well, what I want to do is I want to make known to people of color and to women and to poor people and to working people, all who have been helped with this presidency. We've got the power. I don't care what anyone celebrity has to say. We've got the power, and we better know how to use it and exercise it. We're going to have a significant number of delegates at the convention. We are going to have the opportunity to vote like we have never voted before, at least as well as we have voted before, in order to support our nominee. Whether it is, the New York Times or, the Washington Post, or any of the newspapers with their editorials, okay, they have a right to say or do what they want to, but they don't make the difference. They don't determine. It's the people who vote who make the difference. And I'm saying to our people, we've got to register, we've got to vote, we've got to show up, we've got to mail in those ballots, we've got to drop it in ballot boxes that are being set up, we've got to do whatever it takes to get our vote counted.
All right. I certainly know that we will be hearing more from you, of course, on this campaign trail and more. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
You're welcome, and I'm available to you anytime.
All right. We're going to take you up on that. Good to see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered here live on the Black Star Network. We're going to jump into our panel. Stay with us after this break.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Marissa Mitchell, a news anchor at Fox 5 DC.
Hey, what's up? It's Tammy Roman, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, we are back talking about the election, campaigning, a lot of aberrations and a lot more to come in terms of what we've seen so far. I'm now joined by my two panelists, Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show in Detroit, Michigan, and Matt Manning. He is a civil rights attorney out of Corpus Christi, Texas. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for having us, Candace. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, I'm looking at the two guests, but I'm glad it's you two because I know that you guys can certainly fill the time you normally have to be. But I am not worried, Michael. I am not worried. I wanted to talk a little bit about what you thought, Michael, in terms of what the president has been doing right now. He's trying to save himself, we can say, in terms of what happened on June 27th, appearing on, a television show, doing a live press conference. What do you think about his progress or not progress so far?
Well, I think there's a concerted effort in the Democratic Party amongst the elitists, amongst donors, and I think corporate control media is involved in it to push Joe Biden out. Because when I watch MSNBC, for instance, none of them are saying what I said on this show on June 28th, 2024, that Joe Biden actually won the debate, in the fact checking from numerous news sources, including NBCnews.com, including CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, and Associated Press prove my point, because I read all the fact checking from all 5 of those news sources that I just mentioned. When you look at the fact checking from CNN.com post-debate called Trump Made More Than 30 False Claims During CNN's Presidential Debate, Far More Than Biden, they actually talk about how Biden made at least 9 false claims. Donald Trump made over 30 false claims. So if you documented 3 times as many false claims as Biden, how is all the focus on Biden and talking about he had a bad debate? What about Trump? Trump was even worse than Biden. What the narrative should be, and I can prove my point because proper documentation ends all conversation. What the narrative should be is that Joe Biden on his worst day beat Donald Trump on his best day in a policy debate dealing with facts and evidence, dealing with policies. Donald Trump overwhelmingly made false statements and did not answer the questions he was asked. Joe Biden, even though he did struggle, in that interview with George Stephanopoulos, he said that he was exhausted and he was sick. But even though he did struggle, he did also try to answer the question. And when you look at the fact checking, overwhelmingly, the majority of his answers were pretty factual, even though he did make mistakes. So there's a concerted effort to push him out. And then, D.L. Hughley brought up something about the op-ed from George Clooney, who used to be on The Facts of Life with Tootie and was one of the worst Batmans in the history of the franchise. George Clooney did not mention Project 2025. And see, when you are a white, elitist, wealthy male, even though Project 2025 may be something bad and you may shed some white tears, you're not the focus, you're not the brunt of who they're going after. They're going after African Americans and Latinos. So there's a concerted effort here. We need to fight back and really get to the bottom of this.
You know what, Matt, Michael mentioned the two Georges, George Clooney and George Stephanopoulos. They both have made more than comments about, their lack of faith in the presidency, the president. What are your thoughts about how he has tried to recover over the past week and a half?
I think this is a much more nuanced conversation than I've heard, both just privately in mainstream media. And I say that to this extent. I mean, he's a lifelong statesman. It's, I'm sure, a very difficult thing to come to grips with the fact that he may be just at the time where it's appropriate for him to leave. And I would imagine that there are a lot of people who are kind of hedging their bet. They're afraid to step away from Joe Biden as the nominee because they're afraid of backlash from it. But I think the difficulty with this is that, this conversation is very often rooted in loyalty, and this is not about loyalty. The Democrats' messaging right now is basically, we absolutely have to save democracy by making sure Joe Biden, or really somebody, is elected to defeat Donald Trump. And the issue with that is that there are pretty demonstrative pieces of evidence showing that Mr. Biden's mental acuity is at least reasonably questioned. And I think right now, Michael's talking about a concerted effort. I think that there might be a concerted effort, but I also think two things can be true at the same time. And the problem is we have seen demonstrably from Mr. Biden that there are at least reasonable questions about his mental acuity. And I think the problem is, when we look at the debate and the substantive stuff that Mr. Biden has discussed, I mean, there's no question that he's eminently qualified and considerably more qualified than Mr. Trump. But I think that kind of assumes that your average person is out there looking at that. They are not. They're looking at the pageantry, they're looking at the presentation, and they're looking at an older man who's had a number of gaffes, who is standing opposite, one of the most kind of problematic marketers of our time, right? That's what Donald Trump's whole kind of shtick is. So I say that to say the question really should be, what is the Democrats' duty to its base, and what is the Democrats' duty to the electorate in making sure they have the absolute best person to counter Donald Trump, particularly because that would be consonant with their messaging. All the messaging is we have to save democracy, we have to save democracy. And while that is true, I don't know that you necessarily accomplish that if you are digging your heels in and are not having honest conversations about whether Joe Biden is the person who should be the nominee. Now, as to the efforts that he's taking to try to regain some of that ground, I think he's doing what he has to do. I think the problem with that, though, is that it's unfortunately looking to some extent like it's defiance rather than duty. And I think that's really the question now is, have we transitioned beyond thank you for your service, we need to move somewhere else, or is he really the right person to be the nominee? And I think those are fair questions. I think people who are preparing to cast their ballot in November have every right to ask these questions because notwithstanding his qualifications, that's a seminal issue, particularly when you see Mr. Trump and the looming prospect of Project 2025 on the other side of the aisle. I mean, I think the Democrats are trying to toe the line between not being disrespectful and staying where they are. But I think the problem is strategically they're in a catch-22. I think if they get rid of Mr. Biden.
So you say it's a fair question to maybe ask about maybe some parts of his mental acuity. How do we get the answer? How do we get the fair answer to whether or not all is well?
Well, obviously, so the problem, the problem with the whole narrative here is that Joe Biden is put under a microscope, but people put a blindfold on when they deal with Donald Trump. And the last time I checked, there were two front runners who were going to be the nominees. So one, as Joe Biden mentioned last night in his almost hour-long press conference with the press, peppering him with questions on foreign policy. I'm still waiting on Donald Trump to do the same thing. Donald Trump knows absolutely nothing about foreign policy except what Vladimir Putin tells him. Joe Biden said he takes a neurological test every year, and he took the last one in February. Where is Donald Trump's medical records? Joe Biden makes his medical records public, as far as my understanding. Where are Donald Trump's medical records? So every question that we ask about Joe Biden, you have to ask about Donald Trump, and corporate control media is giving Donald Trump a pass. When you I watched the interview with George Stephanopoulos. The most important part of that interview was at the end of the interview, George Stephanopoulos, who's the former White House communications director in the Bill Clinton administration, knows more about politics than most people in the media. He said they offered a one-on-one interview with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump declined. When the hell has Donald Trump declined a one-on-one interview that's going to be seen by millions of people? The man is a social media whore. The reason why he declined is because he knows as soon as he starts lying, George Stephanopoulos is going to fact-check him in real time, and he's going to walk away with his tail between his legs. That's why he declined. Where's Donald Trump's press conference on foreign policy? He can't talk about foreign policy. So when we have these questions about Joe Biden, you have to ask the same questions about Donald Trump, and corporate control media is giving Donald Trump a pass.
Matt, you started to answer the question before. Is that the solution? Everybody gets the same test, the same number of times, and everybody's information goes public.
Well, I mean, as an aside, I always think it's kind of a strange thing that as a public figure, we think we have some right to knowing your private medical information. But that's, I guess, neither here nor there. I mean, I guess, yeah, what you do is you put it on an even playing field and you say, here's Donald Trump's information, here's Joe Biden's information and let people, do with that what they may. And I want to be very clear. I'm not a Trump apologist. I'm absolutely not voting Republican. But I do think that we have to be honest about this. I think we're having these conversations as though it is problematic to ask these questions. But we're not only talking about somebody who would represent all of us. We're talking about the leader of the free world and, frankly, the most powerful individual in the entire world. I don't think it is a problem to be asking about a person's mental acuity. I think Michael's right. I think we're giving Trump a bunch of passes, but I think the reality is that this is not a fair game. If you want to win this game, you have to be strategic. And the problem is the Democrats are too late to replace him now. But there's some pretty clear evidence that Mr. Biden has lost a step. Whether he's lost a step to the extent that he can't be effective is, a question that stands to be answered by experts who have more expertise than I do. But that is the seminal question. And I think the Democrats are not really playing for wins right now. They look like they're scrambling. And I think that's hurting the electorate because it's eroding confidence in the voters. And here's the thing. The good thing is the polls show that it's still a very, very, very close race, which means those people on the margins are the people who have to be convinced. And that's where my concern would lie, is how do you get those truly undecided voters and those anti-Trump voters who may not like Biden but otherwise are not, completely on the board of Trump? How do you get them to come over and vote Democrat? And I don't know how you do that, but I think those are the questions that are looming right now.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, number one, you have to message better. As article from NBCnews.com dealing with the Congressional Black Caucus, Representative Hakeem Jeffries. They said they have been asking the Biden for months to focus more on kitchen table issues, focus more on inflation, increasing wages, things of that nature, and focus less, even though it is important. Focus less on just talking about saving the democracy and abortion rights, women's reproductive rights. Even though that is important, you've got to elevate on the kitchen table issues. But the other thing that's very important, if Democrats want to win, stop tackling your own quarterback. Stop blocking your own field goals. I've never seen such scared, weak, punk-ass Democrats. And I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, but I sure as hell ain't stupid. But as Basil Michaels on MSNBC said, he's African-American, as he said a few days ago, he said one of the reasons why African Americans are apprehensive about the Democratic Party is because they oftentimes appear weak. When you look at Republicans, they are circling the wagon around a convicted felon, convicted on 34 felony counts in New York, found liable of sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll, found liable of committing fraud when it came to banks, and he has to pay a fine of about $454 million. They're all defending Donald Trump. Democrats should do the same thing with Joe Biden. Whether you like him or not, it's like, how are you out here jumping on TV saying he should step aside? We love him, but it's time for somebody new. 14 million people voted in the primaries already. Let me explain this. 14 million already voted in the primaries. They voted for Joe Biden. They didn't vote for none of these woke-ass Democrats who say it's time to hand it off to the next generation. If you want to pass the torch, you go take the goddamn torch. You got a whole group of privileged-ass people who think shit is supposed to be handed to them. You go take it. You work, you outrun them, you outwork them. You knock on more doors, you get more votes. Joe Biden said, if you want it, come take it from me at the convention. He has 3,896 delegates because he won in the primaries. It takes 1,976 for the nomination. Now come take it from him. I haven't seen such weak, punk-ass nonsense. This makes no sense. You don't want to fight. You just want shit handed to you, okay? And then you turn it on your own and attacking probably the most successful president since Lyndon Baines Johnson. Mess around.
Michael, I'm gonna put a bookmark in there. Let you have the last word. Appreciate that. I know that we will be back with you certainly talking more about this election campaign and Joe Biden. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break. When we come back, some more news that's making headlines. Stay with us here on the Black Star Network.
Coming up on the next Black Tape, a conversation with Professor Howard W. French on his new book, Born in Blackness, covering 600 years of global African history and helping us understand how the world we know today is a gift from Black people.
There could have been no West without Africa and Africa.
That's on the next Black Table with me, Greg Carr, only on the Black Star Network.
Coming soon to the Black Star Network.
I still have my NFL contract in my house, having a case. It's for my 4-year contract. I got a $600,000 signing bonus. My base salary for that first year was $150,000. Matter of fact,
$150,000.
$150,000. That's what I made, $150,000. Now think about it. My signing bonus was a forgivable loan, supposedly. When I got traded to the Colts, they made me pay back my signing bonus to them. I had to give them their $600,000 back.
Wow.
Yeah, I was so pissed. Because, I try to be a man of my word. I'm like, you, I'll give you your money back. Even though I know I earned that money, I gave them their money back. I gave them their $600,000 back. But yet, I was this malcontent. I was a bad guy. I'm about the money. It wasn't about the money. It was about doing right. Because I looked at, because you look at contract. Look at John Elway. John Elway was making $1 million, $800,000. I was making $150,000. I was doing everything. And I'm like, but yet I was, I got so many letters, so I just play for free and all that kind of stuff. You don't forget that kind of stuff.
Right.
That stuff is hurtful.
Hi, I am Tommy Davidson. I play Oscar on Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. I don't play Sammy, but I could. Or I don't play Obama, but I could. I don't do Stallone, but I could do all that. And I am here with Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
Well, an altercation between a black man and the security guards of a Wisconsin hotel ended with the murder of a 43-year-old Devontaye Mitchell, and his family is asking why he had to die. Cell phone video captured the encounter where Mitchell was pinned to the ground by security guards outside of a Hyatt Regency in Milwaukee. The video appears to show guards hitting Mitchell in the head. Mitchell's mother believes he was suffering from a mental health episode. The Milwaukee police referred 4 charges of felony murder to the DA's office in the death of Devontaye Mitchell. Civil Rights Attorney Ben Crump is representing the family, and he joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us. Benjamin, good to see you. Do we have Ben? Oh, you are muted.
Candace, thank you. I'm sorry I was muted. It's such a pleasure to be with you.
No, good to be with you also. Tell us a little bit about the latest. I know that there's still some holes that we are trying to fill in terms of what actually happened on that day, but certainly the latest in terms of the 4 felony referrals to the DA's office. What are we talking about you think will happen in terms of charges?
Well, we're grateful that the Milwaukee Police Department finally sent the 4 felony murder charges to the district attorney. However, we know that until the district attorney actually brings the charges, that we can't take our feet off the gas. And then we have to make sure there's a conviction, because when America sees this video, it's going to be very troubling. George Floyd was in the prone position with knees on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Well, Devontaye Mitchell was down on the ground, Candace, for 8 to 10 minutes in that prone position with knee on his back, knee near his neck, struggling to breathe. And even before he gets there, when you see the security surveillance from inside the hotel, you see him, when they're dragging him on the ground, they're punching him, they're kicking him. And then when they get him outside in the front area of the hotel, you see the white security guard take out the metal baton, and it looked like hit him in the head repeatedly. So when you look at the video in totality, it is just as egregious as George Floyd's torture video. And that's why these Hyatt employees should be held accountable. I mean, these are private citizens. They're not the police. They shouldn't be given greater consideration than any other citizen. And so the franchise owner of Hyatt property there in Milwaukee needs to do the right thing.
And from the video, too, what we also see and hear is Devontaye saying that he will leave, but never given the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. As I said at his celebration of life, he said, please, 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 6 times. Then he said, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then his last words were, please help me. Please help me. And I think Candace and Roland and I have talked about it plenty of times. The last words of these young black men who died unjustly. Eric Garner saying, I can't breathe. George Floyd saying, I can't breathe. Tyree Nichols saying, I just want to go home. And then you get to Devontaye Mitchell saying, please help me. And so we vow to help Devontaye, his family, his wife, his children. We're going to help Devontaye get justice.
So let's talk about the DA for a little bit, who's considering these 4 felony counts. What could and could not happen here? Because certainly we hope that those felony counts will stick and that the charges will come formally. But it could potentially go the other way. Or are you getting the sense from speaking to people behind closed doors that those counts will stand?
Well, we in the black community in America can never, ever take for granted that the legal system is going to do right by us. We got to fight for every measure of justice that we get. And so, obviously, you got video evidence. You got one of the individuals involved, a young black man working for the hotel, whose parents encouraged him to come forward and tell the truth. And his statement is in an affidavit. You got a plethora of evidence to go ahead and file the charges based on the probable cause. I mean, they arrest and charge and convict people in our community with far less evidence, Candace, with no objective evidence, with an innuendo. Somebody say you fit the description. Here we got actual physical evidence, visual evidence, uncontroverted evidence. And so they should charge them. Whether that's going to happen, we have to keep the pressure on. Because what they told me at first when I took the case, it was a week before the RNC convention there in Milwaukee. And they said, well, this is inconvenient. This is inconvenient. And I said, well, ain't that something? If they think it's inconvenient for Milwaukee, what about how inconvenient it is for Devontaye's family to kill him?
Absolutely. You know, one more question before we go to the panel. The Hyatt Regency, certainly they have made a statement, but what are they also telling you behind doors? Anything different than what we are hearing?
Well, it's the franchise owner. Hyatt is the corporate brand. And, you know, our position is all of them are responsible until they do right by this family, and this black family can get full justice. That's criminal culpability and civil accountability. And so Hyatt has said they're going to be fully transparent and they want accountability. And they need to use whatever influence they got to tell their franchise owner to do the right thing. If not, the activists are going to continue to go to every Hyatt that exists and say, until we get justice for Devontaye Mitchell Hyatt, we're not going to let it be business as usual.
All right, I want to go to the panel. Michael, let me start with you. A question for Ben.
All right, Attorney Crump, thanks for coming on again and sharing information about this case. I had 2 quick questions, if possible. One of them, looking at the article, I think this is from NBCnews.com, dealing with this case. It said that a bystander was filming with a camera phone part of the interaction, and one of the security guards spotted the bystander and said, "This is what happens when you go into the ladies' room." Is it possible you can share any information on that? Number one. Number two, have you gotten any information regarding use of force policies, regarding the security officers, their training, anything like that, what they're allowed to do as far as use of force? Do they have arresting powers, detaining powers, et cetera?
You know, those are excellent questions, Michael. I'll answer the second one first. We were flabbergasted to find out that none of the security guards had any training from the Hyatt Hotel or the franchise owner. And so if you didn't train them, I don't know how you can expect them to know what your policy, your use of force policy is. So as we look at the civil matter, that is going to be extremely important. And then to your first question, Michael, you know, they put out this narrative, and this is why we always have to go dig. And anytime they kill black people, we can't accept what they say as the gospel. They try to make it seem as if he was a pervert going into the ladies' bathroom. Well, the video clearly shows he was being chased. He ran into the gift shop, and then he ran out the gift shop and ran into the ladies' bathroom. And the two white women that were in the bathroom gave their statements. They said he never tried to touch them or do anything at all to them. They said he looked like he was scared. He was trying to get away from somebody, and that's exactly what everything suggests he was doing. He was just trying to run away from the security guard. And when you see the video, how they dragging him and punching him and kicking him, you see why he was trying to get away from the security guards. And so transparency, transparency, transparency. America needs to see the video, Michael. We only saw as his sister Naisha said, that video only shows them finishing him off. It's also very important that we see what they did even before they killed him.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, Matt.
Thank you.
Well, good to see you, Ben, and thank you for all your work, brother. Here's the two questions I have for you. The first is, would you describe a little further how the DA is considering this felony murder as opposed to just manslaughter? What felony are they claiming they were actually committing, number one? And the second question is, as it relates to this particular Hyatt, have you found any other evidence of them profiling black people or otherwise treating black people differently than other patrons? Have you found that in your investigation yet?
And again, I'll answer your second question first. We've had Hyatt employees who want to remain anonymous for obvious reasons, but former employees who said, no, the security people, they kind of harass black people. And, you know, Devontaye had mental issues that he was dealing with, but you don't treat people dealing with mental crisis with that excessive force that ends up killing them. And they said they didn't like people out in front of the hotel asking people for money. Well, we understand that you may consider that a nuisance. You don't kill somebody for doing that. You call the police, you call somebody appropriate, but it looked like they were trying to take the law into their own hands, and they were doing it so punitively. I mean, it looked like they were trying to punish them when you put all the videos together. And I think your first question, what was the first question again?
It was just felony murder is how I saw the charges reported. So what felony are they claiming as opposed to just manslaughter or some kind of homicide charge?
Yeah, you know, it depends on if they're going to also be convicted of the assault and battery in the hotel and with the metal baton outside. I don't know why he would take the metal baton out and hit him in the head area, but that's what they said he did repeatedly. And so the felony, as I'm looking at it, could be the punches and the kicks while he was on the ground. And then obviously the murder is when they kept him in that prone position, even though he was saying, I can't breathe in this thing. And the young employee said in his affidavit that when he said that to the security guard, the white security guard who was kind of, I guess, taking control of everybody, giving them orders, he said, I don't want to hear that SHIT.
You know, what strikes me as really interesting is that hotels are where crazy things take place anyway. When you go to a hotel and you have patrons that are there, they trash rooms, they act up. I am sure that they have dealt with unruly people there before, and it didn't end up like this, Ben. It did not end up like this.
Yeah, you're right, Candace. And if you take the former employees and some of the current employees at their word, they say they do disproportionately profile black people and use and exert more force in interacting with them than they do white customers.
I'm also wondering, in terms of, you know, a timeline for all of this to unfold, what will you be looking for next? What meetings will you be having with any, especially police officials? And when will we actually see everything in its entirety in terms of the video?
You know, Candace, they always hide behind this this excuse about it's an ongoing criminal investigation, so they can't release the videos. You know, with all the evidence they got, I expect to see charges within 2 to 3 weeks. I'm going to be shocked if they haven't brought them in based on this evidence. But, you know, they may try to say, oh, we got to wait for a toxicology report and all that kind of stuff. When you think about it honestly, if the roles would have been reversed, and Devontaye Mitchell would have done what was done to him to that white security guard, they wouldn't have had to wait on no autopsy. They wouldn't have had to wait on no investigation. They wouldn't have had to wait on anything. That video would be all over the news, the cable news stations, all across America, and Devontaye would have been arrested, charged, and probably convicted by now. So the question that always remains in my heart is, why are the rules different when it's a dead black person lying on the ground?
Absolutely. All right. Attorney Crump, as always, good to see you. I'm certain that we'll have you back to give us an update on this case. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Queen.
All right. Roland Martin Unfiltered, you are watching that right now. We're going to continue more here on the Black Star Network. Stay with us. We'll be back right after these messages.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Coles.
Hey, I'm Donnie Simpson.
Yo, it's your man Deion Cole from Blackish, and you watch
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, I wanted to continue to talk a little bit more about this case out in Wisconsin at the Hyatt Regency. Matt, I wanted to talk to you. You talked about the underlying felony that might be a consideration in this case. Were you thinking about false imprisonment on any level?
You know, I hadn't thought about that. That's obviously a state-specific charge on whether it's a felony or even a crime. But, you know, what is something I want people to know about this case that I think hopefully will provide Mr. Mitchell's family a lot better opportunity at recovery, not only having Ben Crump and his amazing team, but the fact that this is a private business fundamentally changes how you analyze this. So a lot of the times on this show, we're talking about cases involving law enforcement officers who get their authority from the government, right? But this is private security. So I think the one thing, if there can be even a remote silver lining in such a tragedy, is the fact that it's a private business. Hyatt is all over the world. They have probably insurance limits in the literal billions, which means there is a much greater chance that this family is going to see justice as much as possible from a financial standpoint. But what I was talking about with Ben as it relates to the felony murder, I'm just confused because generally felony murder is someone dies in the course of a person committing a different felony. So, for instance, you know, driving away from a bank robbery, you hit somebody on the road, the person dies, you get charged with felony murder. This doesn't make sense to me because if they're on top of him and if they're doing acts that are very clearly reckless or intentional or knowingly harmful to him, it seems like they just charge them with a homicide outright. And I wonder if that's the prosecutors, or rather the police, trying to cut an early deal and tamp down the potential time for these people. But it doesn't make sense to me because if you look at those actions and you think that they're felonious, then you charge them with a homicide because that's exactly what this was. And this man was killed when he absolutely should not have been treated this way at all. So I'm hoping that Ben and his team are able to secure justice here, and I suspect they will be able to.
Yeah, and you really do kind of have to follow the trail of crumbs, as you said, in terms of who were these security guards, how are they hired, how are they holding themselves out to be in terms of perhaps contractually with the Hyatt Regency. And as you said, it potentially changes everything, which is a very good point. Michael, I wanted to go to you about this and the fact that here we are again, but this time we are not talking about police officers. We are talking about security guards, and what we know about security guards in terms of their level of expertise and their level of what they can do, even when it comes to having a weapon. It is very, very different in terms of a police officer, in terms of what they have in their possession sometimes, but we're at the exact same place.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we're in the exact same place. And, you know, one of the reasons why I ask those questions is a lot of security officers don't have arresting powers, don't have powers to detain people, where some do. Usually ones that do, they've gone through training with local police departments. So, you know, I wanted to find out more about what type of training they had. Now, according to what Attorney Crump said, he, if I understood him correctly, he was saying they really had not had training when it came to use of force, things of this nature. Then you had 4-on-1 at the same time, and then allegedly one of the officers allegedly struck Devontaye in the head with some type of object as well. So while all this was going on, I don't remember here, but were the police called, and what did security tell the police?
Right.
When they called that in as well, what did they make? What were the allegations that they made against Devontaye?
And, you know, it's terribly hard to piece all together, Matt, because when we think of strategy-wise, Benjamin Crump talked about them releasing just part of the video, which we always see as part of the strategy, so that this particular narrative can just already be planted in people's head. Is that what you are seeing go on here? I mean, obviously, they are not letting the whole video go so that we can see all of it. It just seems like an old, ragged dog trick that we are all used to.
Black person is involved, the absolute first thing they do is assassinate his or her character and find every way to sully their name so that they can, control the narrative. And that's what we see happening here as well. What I do think is surprising about this situation, though, is Hyatt, is a private business. And a lot of times in these circumstances, they do everything that they can to avoid bad press, including, quick settlements or getting, especially with an attorney as high powered as Ben Crump. So I'm surprised that they're not doing the opposite, playing a mea culpa out in the news and saying, we care about all our patrons. We can't believe this happened, and are not rushing toward a quick settlement. As it relates to the police and what they're doing in terms of releasing videos, he's 100% right. They do that all the time. They stack the deck so that they can make a victim look like, he or she is somehow deserving of what happened to them. But I am surprised that Hyatt is taking the tack that they are with this, because it seems like they should be taking a different PR perspective on this.
Yeah, I'm sure more protests to come. All right, let's move on to Rudy Giuliani. A federal bankruptcy court judge dismisses Rudy Giuliani's bankruptcy case, saying it is in the best interest of creditors. Now, the decision exposes the former New York City mayor to lawsuits, foreclosures, and other measures that allow creditors, including 2 defamed Georgia election workers, to collect what they're owed. Giuliani filed for bankruptcy in December 2023 after a jury ordered him to pay nearly $150 million in fines and damages to former election workers Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. I'm sure we all remember that, for defaming them through false accusations, saying that the mother and daughter committed election fraud while the 2 were counting ballots in Georgia's Fulton County on Election Day in 2020. Michael, did you see this coming? I mean, we knew that he was going to file for bankruptcy. That's a big number, $150 million. But I must say that I thought it was an interesting decision that the court said, you know what? Can't file for bankruptcy. You have to move forward, and all doors are open to you.
I thought it was a possibility because he withheld financial information. In the piece from CNN.com, it says Mr. Giuliani has failed to provide an accurate and complete picture of his financial affairs in the 6 months that this case has been pending, the judge wrote in his decision. So when you withhold information, when it looks like you're trying to cover up, okay, when it looks like you're not presenting evidence that is needed, things like that, usually things don't go well for you, okay? So I'm happy about this because this man, one of Donald Trump's thugs, put the lives of Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman in jeopardy, okay? And these sisters probably suffer with some type of post-traumatic stress syndrome or something like that from the death threats that they got and just the blatant racist lies that Rudy Giuliani told. So he deserves this and a whole lot more. Hopefully he ends up in prison.
Matt, what is your take on what happened and the fact that here was this esteemed mayor, all right, someone who in the legal community decades ago was on the cover of all type of magazines. He was America's mayor. And now this particular demise, what do you think actually happened with Rudy Giuliani and all of this? Because some of it doesn't make sense when we think about who he was and what he has become today in terms of this Trump loyalist that eventually got him right to this particular decision today. Because had he not been so loyal, he would have not have gone to the lengths that he did in order to defame these 2 women and really, as Michael said, give them post-traumatic stress disorder because of all of the death threats. Their lives stopped.
Yeah, this is why I love being on with you, Candace, because you ask me questions and answer them as you ask the question. You hit the nail on the head. And the answer to this is Rudy Giuliani is the exemplar of hubris. He is a lust for power, right? When you saw Trump scrambling back in 2016, running for office for the first time, and you saw these people getting close to him. I mean, it's crazy to me that Rudy Giuliani is a former United States attorney, a very prestigious position for attorneys. And he's now getting hit with $150 million judgments with defamation. And both you and Michael alluded to this, but the best part of this to me is the fact that we absolutely have to have accountability for very public figures who affect the lives of very private people like these 2 sisters, right? When he says something like that and it causes death threats for average citizens, he absolutely should have to pay through the nose. And I'm glad that the judge saw that this was a subterfuge, right? Filing for bankruptcy to try to get out of paying what he owes. I'm glad he has to pay it. And I think Michael's right. I think he will be in prison. I think that's the cost of not only loyalty, but a lust for power that's unchecked, particularly from somebody like Giuliani, who, you know, in 2001 in that time frame was really, you know, kind of an exemplar of here's a public servant, or at least touted to be a public servant who was really leading New York during a crisis. But what we know is that he's really just got a voracious desire for power, and that desire for power has him next to Donald Trump, who has sent him to ruin, and for good measure. You know, you should have better discretion, and you shouldn't consort with people like Donald Trump. That's what happens when you do. That's why all these people around him are falling the way they are.
You know, Michael, what I find what is most interesting about this is that here we have Rudy Giuliani, who was sued for defamation, lost the case. On the other hand, you have the Supreme Court giving the former president, Donald Trump, immunity and having him say to himself and to the world, remember I told you I could say anything I want? I actually can. So on the one hand, you have Giuliani being, sued for defamation. You can't say that. But then Donald Trump, he seems to be in his own lane. The two just don't make sense.
Well, when you understand the Heritage Foundation and the Fairless Society, you understand Mandate for Leadership that the Heritage Foundation released in 1980. And the Reagan administration implemented 64% of the 2000 policies that the Heritage Foundation proposed in Mandate for Leadership in 1980. What's taking place with Project 2025 is part 2 of what the Heritage Foundation did in 1980. This makes perfect sense. You're dealing with the consolidation of powers of the president, the 3 judges, Supreme Court judges that Donald Trump got confirmed, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. Those were names submitted to him that came from the Heritage Foundation and the Fairless Society. This makes perfect sense. These people are playing for keeps. They're playing into the end game. And we, as African Americans, we really have not focused on the power of the judiciary. We focus on the president. But there are 3 branches of the federal government: the executive, the legislative, which is the Senate and Congress, and the judicial branch of the federal government. The judicial branch interprets law from the legislative branch and interprets policy from the executive branch, and they determine what is legal and not legal based upon constitutionality. Now, the other thing is that all the powers of immunity that this Supreme Court says belong to Trump also belong to Joe Biden.
What do you think, Matt, will we hear any more from Giuliani? Or legally speaking, isn't this his last straw? I mean, he filed for bankruptcy in terms of getting out of this particular $150 million judgment. No more subterfuge. He can't waste any more time. He's not in court. He can't withhold information. He's longer in court. Bankruptcy judge said, no, you're going to go forward. Is this the end of the road in terms of excuses and what he and his attorneys can do to get out of this?
I think that depends on, a number of things, primarily what happens with his criminal cases. But kind of to answer your question, what I would think the next step would be for Giuliani would be to start squealing like a canary. I mean, singing like a canary. I think what makes sense at this point is he needs to cut his losses, because clearly Donald Trump is not coming to his rescue, right? So he needs to start dropping a dime. Let me tell y'all everything this man done. I was there at the table. I watched it happen. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. And I don't know if that is because he's holding out hope that he's going to be saved by Mr. Trump. And I don't even mean him being reelected. I mean, just his machine coming to his rescue. But that's the problem with people like this. You get tied to somebody as depraved as Donald Trump, and you get what's coming to you. And, Giuliani, I don't know if this is the end of the road as it relates to his legal issues, but I do know that it looks like him and a lot of these other people close to Trump have a lot of baggage related to what they did to stay close to Trump. So I think he's going to be cooked on the criminal cases. I mean, obviously, I don't know any of the evidence, but if they've charged him with a conspiracy, I would not be surprised if we didn't find a lot of information where Giuliani was intimately involved in the conspiracy that they're charged with. And I think the end of the road will be a prison cell.
I think that's a really amazing point. Michael, what do you think about Rudy Giuliani saying, you know what, it's time for me to sing like a canary. I got a good tune for you.
Well, yeah, I always thought he was going to cut a deal, because Rudy doesn't want to go to prison. He's put a lot of people in prison when he was a U.S. attorney. And I could tell Rudy's a punk. He can't fight either. I could tell you that right now. He can't fight. So he doesn't want to go to prison.
You know this for sure, huh, Mike?
What'd you say?
I said, you know this for sure, huh?
Yeah, he's a punk. He can't fight. You know, in Frank Lucas in American Gangster, Denzel Washington, he said the loudest one in the room is the weakest one in the room. Donald Trump is a punk also. He can't fight either. I'm telling you right now, he can't fight. So they don't want to go to prison. Donald Trump is trying to do everything he can to stay out of prison. Now, he'll market his mugshot. He'll sell that. Donald Trump does not want to go to prison, okay? Neither does Rudy Giuliani. So, yeah, he'll probably try to cut a deal. I think he may be trying to hold out hope that Trump will get reelected and try to give him some type of presidential pardon or something like that.
That's going to be my next question, Michael.
Yeah. The other thing was, if I remember correctly, didn't he turn down a presidential pardon or something like that previously? Because the other criminals got presidential pardons. Roger Stone. You had people like Paul Manafort. You had some of the other thugs around Donald Trump. They got pardons. So we'll see what happens here. But yeah, Rudy does not want to go to prison. I'm telling you right now.
And so, yeah, Michael stole my thunder a little bit. Let me finish with you before we go to a break, Matt. It seems to me that maybe that's his last option, holding out a little bit of hope for, if I do get sentenced, I'm counting on Trump to get back into office and he'll take care of me. What do you think about that?
I think the bird in the hand is better than the one in the bush. And the bird in your hand is you have all the baggage. So if I'm representing Rudy Giuliani, I'm like, you don't know what's going to happen with this election. And moreover, your homeboy has not come to your defense. He has not pulled you out of this frying pan. So at this point, you need to tell these people what this man has done. And I say that jokingly, but I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know any of these people's relationships, but it doesn't seem like Trump is coming to his rescue, and it doesn't seem like the cavalry is coming for Rudy. So he needs to cut his losses and do what he can to tamp down his liability, because I think he's going to be in a prison cell.
All right. Certainly not the end of this story, but the end of the story here for now on Roland Martin Unfiltered. We're going to take a break. Stay with us.
On the next A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie. People can't live with them, can't live without them. Our relationships often have more ups and downs than a boardwalk roller coaster, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Trust your gut. Whenever your gut is like, this isn't healthy, this isn't right, I don't like the way that I'm being treated. This goes for males and females. Trust your gut, and then whenever that gut feeling comes, have a conversation.
Knowing how to grow or when to go. A step-by-step guide on the next A Balanced Life on Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hello, I'm Paula J. Parker. Truly proud of the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder on Disney+. And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Tamia Clay has been missing from her Hammond, Louisiana home since March 13, 2024. The 15-year-old is 5 feet 2 inches tall, weighs 187 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. And anyone with information about Tamia Clay should call the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office at 985-748-8147. All right. Florida A&M University will be searching for a new president. Today, President Dr. Larry Robinson announced that he will step down from his position as president, which he has held for just under 7 years. His exact departure date will be determined once the Board of Trustees meets. The university said Dr. Robinson plans to return to his FAMU School of the Environment professor role before being named FAMU's 12th president on November 30th, 2017. Now, Robinson's announcement comes months after we saw the now ceased $237 million donation from Texas hemp farmer Gregory Jerami, which made national headlines and is currently under investigation. Poor licensure program performances also heightened concerns from the Florida Board of Governors. We look at this, Matt, and I don't think that this is a very big surprise, but it also seems as though there's something behind the scenes we don't know about quite yet.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm frankly surprised he stayed on as long after that debacle as he did. Jarrell Blakely, who broke the story, is a friend of mine from college, brilliant brother. And I'm glad he did the work that he did, because this is the kind of thing that shows, institutional failure, especially from the president and the C-suite executives who saw a very big dollar sign and didn't do just basic due diligence to check it. And FAMU is a fantastic university, so it's really sad that their brand has been sullied by this. But I'm sure there's a lot going on behind the scenes. There may have been some deals cut. He's obviously staying on the faculty, but I hope that their next leader and their next, group of leadership is able to shepherd the university going forward and continue making some of the strides that they've made. But that is a huge black eye on that campus. It's just extraordinary that happened, because it was so easily disproven had they done very basic work.
Yeah. Michael, what do you think is going on here? Do you think what is going on is what we are actually seeing, and that this president who will be stepping down, it was on his own volition, he made the decision, and that it all worked according to how we are reading?
Yeah, I don't have direct evidence that it was because of the over $200 million fake donation from the hemp entrepreneur, but it seems like that if that wasn't the primary reason, it probably played into the whole calculation, because I felt that there were going to be some people resigning or getting fired behind that, because one of the things that it did, even though in the beginning, we want to believe stories about African-American entrepreneurs that give back and give to HBCUs. But when nobody had ever heard of this guy, when they're going back and forth over, okay, the stocks have already been given, things like this, but who gave value to the stocks, that makes any institution the laughing stock of education, not to do a play on words, but it's just embarrassing. It's like, wait a second, nobody from your school of business did any research on this guy? It's just embarrassing. So yeah, we'll see what the real reasons behind this are. But it was just sad to see how everything turned out also behind this. Because I know budgets were made and plans were made to spend that money, right? And now you have to recalibrate because you find out that, you were given monopoly money.
And process-wise, yes, we look at Dr. Robinson, someone who, as the president, was a final word in many situations. But process-wise, Matt, a lot of people were involved in this along the way. I'm actually surprised that, as you said, it took this long, and I'm surprised that other people somewhere along the way also didn't get fired or removed or decided to voluntarily step away.
Yeah, I'm with you completely, particularly because, most universities have developmental teams or foundations or endowment team, right? People who go out and get money, who get donations for the university. So I don't understand how it went through presumably multiple levels of contact with this guy who seems to be just a straight up fraud based on what I've seen reported. And nobody got wind of that, particularly because $237 million is an astronomical amount of money. And it's an astronomical amount of money compared to a lot of HBCUs endowments. So, for it to be meted out over a number of years, it seems like this is the kind of thing you truly want to vet. If we were talking about a purported $50,000 gift, this would be a completely different conversation. But you're talking, institution changing money. And I don't know how they didn't do the very basics to determine that this was not a real pot of gold.
All right, and let's think about this. I want all three of us to think about this for a moment, especially starting with you, Matt, your legal background. It seems as though this particular pledge was somewhat fraudulent and that there would be something that would happen legally to come down on all of the havoc he caused, knowing that he was not holding himself out to be who he said he was.
Yeah, I've thought about that, and I don't know that I've really come to any conclusion on exactly what he could be charged with. But, there are a lot of state level criminal and civil charges essentially for fraud. And I would think that this is fraud not only to what he represented to the university, but whatever, kind of to Michael's point about how the university planned to use the money, anything that they did in reliance. So if they spent any money setting anything up or, otherwise expending monies, expecting to get money from him, then I think that, he should be liable for that, whether it be criminally or civilly. But this is definitely fraudulent. And I'm sure that people looking at it might find ways both on the state and federal end to prosecute him, because I'm assuming there would be some fraudulent documents involved, maybe fraudulent transfers. I'm not sure of what the evidence would show, but it seems to me, he represented something that wasn't true, and that should be actionable.
Michael, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it was definitely fraud involved. And, once again, you have to do some vetting. Roland did a number of segments dealing with this, and he was really good, because it's like, okay, so nobody from the city where FAMU is, nobody had heard of this guy. Nobody heard of this guy in the city where he was in. Let's Google this guy's name. Let's research his operation. Let's go visit his operation. Let's go visit. Let's see how many employees he has. Things like that. He said he had thousands of contracted employees, et cetera. You remember on Saturday Night Live, they had that skit, yeah, that's the ticket. They got it loud all the time. And he said, yeah, that's the ticket. The more you heard about it, the more lies you heard. Okay, thousands of contracted employees. Okay, this guy's like in his 30s. And we want, I used to read Black Enterprise every month. Yeah, we want to celebrate successful African-American entrepreneurs. But it's like, hold on, wait a second. Something's wrong about this story. So, and the more we heard about it, the worse it got. That's the part about it. The more we heard about it, the worse it got. But yeah, I think there's definitely some fraud involved in this. And I don't know if there are possible legal charges behind this as well. I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah. Matt, what I'm thinking is that Dr. Robinson, at least he wasn't fired, because, again, I think that when we look at this whole process, that there were a lot of people involved, and it all shouldn't have fallen on him. And he's going back to the classroom, it seems like, or some other capacity, but he is, in fact, staying with FAMU, and I think that was fair.
Well, heavy is the head that wears the crown. What happens when the team isn't losing? It is not winning. The coach gets fired. That's how it works. And, the buck stops with him ultimately. Now, granted, I have no idea what evidence was presented to him or not presented to him, but I think your point is well taken. There may be other people who are not in these positions anymore. And frankly, they shouldn't be, because this is public money. It's a public university, right? So everything that the school does should be in support of the public, and the public trust is an indispensable part of public service. So once you lose that public trust, you no longer have that capacity to do public service. But he'll continue teaching, and hopefully FAMU will have a new leader that can root out very basic, obvious things like you're not getting $237 million from a dude with no real employees selling hemp somewhere in Texas. Like, that's not happening. And hopefully the next people can figure that out.
Yeah. All right. As we go to break, let's also hope that those alumni, that they're contributing a little bit more in light of all of this, because as Michael has said, a real letdown, especially if this money was already promised in certain places throughout the university. All right. You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. Stay with us. We'll be back after a break.
Coming soon to the Black Star Network.
I still have my NFL contract in my house. I have it in a case. It's 4 of them for my 4-year contract. I got a $600,000 signing bonus. My base salary for that first year was $150,000. Matter of fact,
$150,000.
$150,000. That's what I made. $150,000. Now think about it. My signing bonus was a forgivable loan, supposedly. When I got traded to the Colts, they made me pay back my signing bonus to them. I had to give them their $600,000 back.
Wow.
Yeah, I was so pissed. Because, I try to be a man of my word. I'm like, you, I'll give you your money back. Even though I know I earned that money,
right.
I gave them their money back. I gave them $600,000 back. But yet, I was this malcontent. I was a bad guy. I'm about the money. It wasn't about the money. It was about doing right. Because I looked at, because you look at contract. Look at John Elway. John Elway was making $1 million, $800,000. I was making $150,000. I was doing everything. And I'm like, but yet I was, I got so many letters, so I just play for free and all that kind of stuff. You don't forget that kind of stuff.
Right.
That stuff is hurtful.
Sherry Shepard with Sammy Roman.
I'm Dr. Robin B., pharmacist and fitness coach, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, the West Virginia police chief responsible for the hiring of a former Cleveland officer who fatally shot 12-year-old Tamir Rice in 2014 has stepped down. White Sulphur Springs Police Chief D.S. Tubert returned to his former patrolman position and recommended hiring Timothy Lohman as a probationary officer. Lohman resigned from the White Sulphur Springs police force last week. It was the third time in 6 years that Lohman left a small police department due to a backlash shortly after he had been hired. Tamir was playing with a pellet gun outside of Cleveland, Ohio Recreation Center on November 22nd, 2014, when he was shot and killed by Lohman seconds after Lohman and his partner arrived. Michael, I want to pass this over to you. The stepping down, what do you make of that?
Well, from my understanding of this, the police chief when you look at the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, one of the things it would have done if Senator Tim Scott had not blocked it in the Senate, one of the things it would have done was create a national database for police officers and prevent police officers who get fired from one police department just to go to another, rightfully fired from a police department for infractions, killing people unjustly, things like this, rightfully fired, to keep them from just going to another police department in a nearby city, getting a job there, and possibly doing the same thing. And this was one of the criticisms against this officer when he went and, got hired by other by another police department. So Timothy Lohman. So I think the criticism is just here, and just the whole case dealing with Tamir Rice was tragic, because when you go look at that footage, and Attorney Benjamin Crump talked about this, the police car had not even stopped, had not even come to a full stop before Officer Timothy Lohman started shooting Tamir Rice. It was about 1.8 seconds, if I remember correctly. Within 1.8 seconds of that car arriving, shots rang out. Yeah. So, this whole thing is once again a tragic situation.
Yeah, and Matt, it just seems as though there was a lot of shifting that went unnoticed in terms of the hiring and the fact that there were always problems that followed this man each time he moved.
Yeah, and as always, you and Michael hit the nail on the head. You know, what I hate about this case in particular is that it's dishonest. And I mean that to say, you know, what they always do is come out and say, I didn't know it was going to cause this fear and all that stuff. But if you look at what this police chief actually said, is he said, doesn't this guy get another opportunity? You know, what opportunity does a cop have if they shoot someone? Should they never be a cop again? Yeah, they should never be a cop again. You know, most cops go through their careers never shooting anybody, number one. And number two, you don't have a right to be a police officer. You don't have a right to do that job. That's a job that has a lot of power and a lot of authority, and therefore we need to make sure the right people do it. So the idea that he hired this person and did not know the backlash that it would cause and did not just exercise the good discretion is the truth of it. But I thought his statement was a little disingenuous. And, you know, that is a big issue. Not only cops leaving Department A to go to Department B after something bad happens, but what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of times the police unions are so strong that they get back pay. I've read some crazy situations that police officers have committed crimes, done other things, and got back pay from the department because of the collective bargaining agreement. So I think there are a number of different things institutionally that need to be changed to ensure they're not getting hired someone else and are also not getting compensated in the event they've done something egregious.
Yeah, and Michael, let's think about it. It takes longer to get a cosmetology license in the United States than it does for the training to become a police officer. We talk about training often, what it can and cannot do in terms of what a police officer, should learn in their learning curve. But I think that part of the tragedy here is that we are hearing the same story over and over again. We talked about it just being with regular security guards that weren't police officers at the Hyatt Regency in Wisconsin, but it's the exact same story, and nobody seems to be able to get right any of the training or change it to a point where it makes a marketable difference.
Well, one of the problems is that there are no nationwide standards for police training. You have approximately 18,500 police departments across the country, 800,000 law enforcement officers. You don't have nationwide standards for police training, number one, and the police training police academy somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks, some cities, municipalities, it may be a little less than 8 weeks. But the other thing is not only do you need some type of nationwide standards for policing, de-escalation tactics as well, understanding use of force, understanding how to engage with people who have mental illnesses. But the other thing is that you have to have ongoing training. Now, when you talk about ongoing training costs money. Ongoing training is not free. You have to have ongoing training in basically every other profession, whether it's education for teachers. They have professional development like every year. When you talk about doctors, they have ongoing training that they have to go through. Basically, every other profession has some type of ongoing training once a year, once every 2 years. So we can't say, well, when police officers need ongoing training and it costs money, was a lot of times there's people pull back from that. Yes, they do need ongoing training, just like every other profession.
That's right. Listen, Matt, continuing legal education credits sound familiar?
Yeah, they do. And I think Michael's right to an extent, but I want to push back on that because I don't think it's about training. It's about a lack of disincentives to do certain things. I look at police officers' training ledgers all the time. Many of them have thousands of hours of training. But it doesn't matter if you don't get in trouble for when you break the law or when you do something egregious to someone's rights. The problem is not the training. The problem is if they don't follow their training or they don't do something that is reasonable, they have a lot of immunities built in on the civil side. And then you have prosecutors who are disinclined to charge them with crimes. How often are we on this show and you talk about a case and the first thing the lawyer says is, we want this person criminally charged? There are not disincentives to acting against your training. And that's the real issue. Unless police officers are held accountable a lot more forcefully, then there's no disincentive to them doing bad things. And that's the crux of it. It's not training.
So that deals with enforcing policy as well within the police department. So yes, you need ongoing training. Yes, you need better training. I would argue you need national standards when it comes to police training. But also, as we talked about here on this show as well, this is why I said more African Americans are going to have to apply to these police departments. African Americans who have the right mindset, not the ones who allegedly beat Tyree Nichols to death. I'm not talking about those type. OK, I'm talking about those that have a guardian mentality. You're going to have more African Americans who apply to these police departments, who take these jobs and want to become the type of officers we say we want to see. But you also have to have enforcement of existing policies and new policies that will be put in place as well. So it's one thing to have policies on the books, but it's another thing to actually enforce the policy. So a lot of times you won't see policies actually enforced like they should be when people violate training. So it has to be a holistic approach to this. OK, nationwide standards for policing is one that's really important. But the other thing is actually enforcing policies that are on the books.
And you know what, Matt, when we talk about enforcing policies, and we always talk about this on this show, it boils down to that democratic process, too, or your civil engagement, your civic engagement in the process. What is going on in your town in terms of the police? What is going on in your state? Are you involved? Yes, we talk about getting out the right to vote and getting out to vote on a national level. But locally, people also need to be paying attention at what is going on in their own police stations, in their own counties, in those 18,500 counties that Michael's making reference to, so that you can make change or march where you need to or get involved where you need to in order to change it at local levels, too.
Correct. And in your state house and in your city hall, the people, to Michael's point, who make the policies that are enforced or not enforced. And even that is a problem, right? Because, yesterday I got hired by somebody who was sexually assaulted in jail, the first time they'd ever been arrested. They make a call to the local sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office has one of its own investigate one of its other own. That doesn't make sense. As a matter of course, it should be a policy that you call a different law enforcement agency to come in and investigate. But there's so many little things that stack up to make it where there are immunities and it's impossible to hold people accountable. And to your point, we need to have greater awareness at our halls of government. But beyond that, we need to have a greater demand that those in the halls of government remove some of those institutional blocks that make it hard for people to seek justice in these circumstances. Colorado did it not long ago, removing qualified immunity. If other states did that, I think it would reform markedly a lot of the actions that you see from police officers, because that shield would not be there in the most egregious situations and people would be getting justice.
Yes, go ahead.
I had a question for Matt. So, Matt, we talk about now, I agree qualified immunity should be removed, but I have also been hearing that do you think if qualified immunity is removed, then insurance companies will start selling police misconduct liability insurance? Because I've heard some things around that being proposed as well. And the other thing is, one other aspect of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act was lowering the standard for federal criminal prosecution of police officers from willful intent down to negligence, because it's harder to prove willful intent. You have to, that goes to state of mind. You have to prove that they willfully intended to deprive somebody of their civil rights, which is much harder to prove. So what are your thoughts? And I'm trying to turn into the host of the show, but what are your thoughts on that when it comes to what are your thoughts on that when it comes to police misconduct liability insurance? You think that would start being sold if that law is repealed?
I think that's a brilliant question. And I think, one, insurance companies are as close to the devil as any civil thing can be, so they will find a way to make money. Yes, they'll start selling those policies, number one. But, to that end, and Candace, thank you for letting us run a little bit. But one of the issues, Michael, is you don't always have mandatory indemnification, meaning in a lot of my cases, I can sue a police officer and sue her based on what she did and sue the city. But the city doesn't have a duty to pay her judgment necessarily. So one of the things that happened is the cities need to be responsible via law. And I'm sure they are in certain states. They're not in Texas. But if a police officer does something, if if the city knows that they have to pay a judgment against that officer or a settlement, I think that's going to mean they're going to enforce their policies because they want to make sure that they stay solvent. So, yes, I think there would be some insurance policies purchased, but whether it be by the police officers or whether it be by their municipalities is a different question. And that I don't know. But I'll tell you this. You know, we have other laws where they find a balance between immunity and allowing people to have some semblance of justice. So a good example, in the state of Texas, if you sue the state of Texas, the maximum they can pay you on a settlement is up to $250,000. I think it should be considerably more than that. But at least there is something that says if a certain thing happens by a state actor, there is a means by which you can recover, right? But with qualified immunity, what it does is it gives a judge all the latitude to say, oh, okay, I think what this cop did is okay. Or, you know, you don't have any other instances of this exact thing happening by this police officer. Therefore, we're going to hold them harmless. And it can be the most egregious thing. You know, a cop could kick somebody in the face, and the Fifth Circuit would say, you don't have any other cases where a cop kicked somebody in the face, so you haven't proven to us that's a constitutional violation. And that just defies logic. So I think it's incumbent on our legislators to put in some kind of schemes so that people can actually seek justice. And whether that's mandatory indemnification or mandatory insurance policies, something like that, I think it's incumbent on them because the courts are not going to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Let me get your insight, Michael, because you mentioned this in terms of getting more people of color to be police officers. How do you think that can happen? And how do you think we can make the profession an inviting one?
Well, first of all, there's a nationwide shortage of police officers, and there has been one going back to COVID and right after COVID. There has to be a recalibration in the African-American community. There are some legitimate concerns and fears when it comes to some law enforcement officers. There are some legitimate concerns, but we have to be solution-oriented. And oftentimes we get upset and we'll march and protest, but we have to move from protesting to power acquisition. OK, a lot of these police departments are open for us to go in and get these jobs. And many of them across the country have lowered the standards that are needed to become police officers. Not saying that we need lower standards so we can become police officers. But what I'm saying is that's how desperate many of these departments have become. So we have to ask the question, OK, who do we want to be the police in our communities? OK, because they're not going to eliminate police in these communities. Do we want police officers coming from the outside? Do we want white officers coming from the suburbs? Or do we want African Americans who have a guardian mentality and see people in the community as people who need to be protected and not policed? Because those are two different mentalities. So you only protect what you respect. So when you grow up in the community and you know the people, you know the elders, you know the children, things like that, you want to be there to be an assistance to them, to help them protect them. Sometimes when you come outside the community and most of what you know is what you've seen on Fox News or what you've seen in the media, things like that, and a lot of that could be negative, you may have a different perspective. And the other thing, I think a lot of our various organizations need to be vocally promoting this. You know, one of the downfalls, I think, of the whole Black Lives Matter movement, there were some things that I think they meant well, other things that really didn't make sense. But they weren't advocating for us to, like, let's go get these jobs in these departments and become the officers we say we want to see. We want to see all these policies put in place. Well, where are you going to get the officers who abide by the policies? OK, some of the first people who should have applied to those jobs in the police departments are the Black Lives Matter protesters. Because now you can actually go do the job the way you said it needed to be done. OK, but the other thing is now some people may disagree with me on this, but hey, let's keep it 100. You got some people who mean well and have good hearts and committed. You got other people who are in the social protest for the money. And then when you decrease the need for the social protest, now you're messing with their money. So some of them are not focused on solutions to the problem. They're focused on raising money to keep fighting against the problem. That's a whole nother show.
That's a whole nother show. Listen, but for that same question, before we go to a break, Matt, I want to throw that to you in terms of making a job, becoming a police officer attractive to someone who's an African-American male or female?
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I would say I've heard enough stories of black cops who were, vilified or attacked themselves inside the department, not only by other cops who may have been racist, but people who just left them out to dry if they were trying to do the right thing. So I think the first thing is you would have to have some assurance that you can actually do the job and stand on business, if you will, without fear of reprisal. And I think there are a lot of black police officers across the country who would tell you that was their experience, particularly when they were in departments that were not homogeneously black. So one, I think you need those institutional safeguards. And again, that comes from enforcement. And we've had a million stories on this very show about officers who tried to do the right thing and either got extricated by their department or a cabal, essentially just a conspiracy inside certain police departments to hide things or do certain things that are either not following the law or that are otherwise discriminatory. So I think you would need assurances that if you're going to go be a black cop, you'll be protected. And I don't know how you give that on the micro level, but I think that would be a necessary condition precedent before a lot of black people start becoming police officers.
Yeah, and what often happens when we get into these spaces where we tend to be the minority, which would probably often be the case no matter what town USA you are in when you get that job, is that the responsibility often falls on you, Matt. The responsibility often falls on you, Michael, though you are the one who you are taking the job expecting those safeguards. People in those positions are often in the process, become a part of the process to putting those safeguards in place, really putting more work in our laps for jobs that we're not getting paid more for in order to put those safeguards that Matt is talking about in place to begin with.
Well, yeah, but that's true. But I think we have to make a decision on what it is we really want, okay, and how to get it. All right. Mm-hmm. And it needs to start with our communities where we are the majority of the people in those communities. All right. If you're in a predominantly African-American city, you want the majority of your officers to be white. You want the majority of your officers to be from the suburbs, or do you want them to be people from your community that care about the people in the community? And when Miss Johnson's boy, who's 20 years old and mentally ill, when you see him having a fit, you don't see him as a threat because Miss Johnson, you've known that kid since he was 5 years old, so you don't feel a need to shoot him. OK, you can talk to them. There's a cultural competency that oftentimes comes when you have the right type of African-American police officer who does not see certain people or certain behaviors coming from their community as a threat as other people would coming from outside of that community. So it's going to have to take a holistic approach to this. But we have to realize, look, we have to move from protesting to power acquisition. OK, and take control of these police departments. And then the other thing is the mayor appoints in most cities. There are some differences, but majority of the cities, the mayor appoints the police chief. The police chief helps to set the tone of policing in the department as well. So you're dealing with the mayor, you're dealing with city council, you're dealing with the police chief also. But we have to make up our minds. Look. We need to focus on power acquisition.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to go to a break after that wonderful conversation. You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. Stay with us.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Coming soon to the Black Star Network.
I still have my NFL contract in my house, having a case. It's 4 of them, for my 4-year contract. I got a $600,000 signing bonus. My base salary for that first year was $150,000. Matter of fact,
$150,000.
$150,000. That's what I made, $150,000. Now think about it. My signing bonus was a forgivable loan, supposedly. When I got traded to the Colts, they made me pay back my signing bonus to them. I had to give them their $600,000 back.
Wow.
Yeah, I was so pissed. Because, I try to be a man of my word. I'm like, you, I'll give you your money back. Even though I know I earned that money, I gave them money back. I gave them $600,000 back. But yet, I was this malcontent. I was a bad guy. I'm about the money. It wasn't about the money. It was about doing right. Because I looked at, because you look at contract. Look at John Elway. John Elway was making $1 million, $800,000. I was making $150,000. I was doing everything. And I'm like, but yet I was, I got so many letters, so I just play for free and all that kind of stuff. You don't forget that kind of stuff.
Right.
That stuff is hurtful.
Hello, I'm Jamia Pugh. I am from Coatesville, Pennsylvania, just an hour right outside of Philadelphia.
My name is Jasmine Pugh. I'm also from Coatesville, Pennsylvania.
You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay right here.
All right, as President Biden tries to refocus his campaign, he is live in Detroit now at a rally. We're going to go live ourselves to see what he's bringing to the audience.
Well, I tell you what. Well, thank you. I love you back. Look, I'm not going home unless I get one sign. And that is Motown is Joetown, and it is. You don't know how true that is. My dad sold automobiles, got me through high school and college and law school, and selling automobiles and everything. We always looked at Motown. UAW. By the way, Pastor Rudolph, yes, her, she's the A&M Church. When I was I'm still a young guy, but when I was a young fella, involved in the civil rights movement in my state, which was segregated by law, I'd always start Pastor Beeman, now Bishop Beeman's church, the A&M Church in Wilmington, for real. I'd go to 7:30 Mass, and I'd go to 10 o'clock services. We plan what we're going to do, how to desegregate the restaurants and streets of our city. And I tell you what, now you know why I spent so much time in the A&M Church. Pastor, thanks for that introduction and for your spiritual leadership in the community. And by the way, we got a great crowd here tonight to state the obvious, but if I didn't do this, I'd get in trouble. My dad looking down on me. We love you! My dad would give me hell if I didn't turn and say, "Excuse my back, I apologize." Look, folks, members of Congress, Debbie, I've got your back, and I got your back as well. Members of Congress, Debbie, Haley, and by the way, I want you to know that I've spent a lot of time with Debbie. She's helped me like a lot. And I forget which event we're at, and someone said, "You're his wife, aren't you?" Because she looks like Jill, my wife. And Siri, thank you very much. I can't tell you. Look, we got state leaders, Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist. He's hard to miss. He's 7'3". Secretary of State Benson. Laura Bourne, Democratic chairman. We got civil rights leaders, faith leaders, labor leaders, including SEIU, CWA, AFL-CIO. Thank you all. And by the way, I don't call it labor, it's simple. Unions. I say the word. I can't tell you how much this means to me. I really mean it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And folks, look, I'm here for one reason. Kamala and I won Michigan in 2020 because of you, and we're going to win it again in 2024. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to stand up for women in America. We're going to protect contraception. We're going to protect IVF. And we're going to restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land. I mean it. We're going to protect the right to vote. We're going to fight for Medicare and Social Security, not cut it like the other guy wants to do. And I promise I'm going to keep lowering the cost of prescription drugs in America. We're going to keep expanding health care. No matter how many times Trump and his MAGA Republicans come after the Affordable Care Act, we will stop them and stop them and stop them. I mean it. Too many people are depending on it. We're going to protect our children. We're going to get weapons of war off the street. We're going to ban assault weapons. Folks, look, more children are killed by a bullet than any other reason in America. They die for that for more than anything else, any disease, any problem. It's sick. And above all else, we're going to stand up for our Constitution and save our democracy. Folks, you probably noticed there's a lot of speculation lately. What's Joe Biden going to do? Is he going to stay in the race? Is he going to drop out? Here's my answer. I am running, and we're going to win. I'm not going to change that. In fact, just today, the Marist poll released a national poll that has me beating Trump 50 to 48. I don't know all this drop-off that took place. There's so much of my narrative, my campaign is falling apart, they say. I'm the nominee of the Democratic Party, the only Democrat or Republican who has beaten Donald Trump ever. And I'm going to beat him again. I know him. Donald Trump is a loser.
All right, a crowd that is alive in Detroit, Michigan at the Renaissance High School there, where President Biden continues to make his speech saying Donald Trump is a loser. I am running and we're going to win. We are going to save our democracy. As the crowd chanted, "We love you and got your back." Matt, I know that was just a little bit of a taste as we end the show here, but what do you say about his appearance and his strategy for trying to win things back?
Well, I say I was very wrong at the top of the show. I'm glad to see Joe in this form and getting after it. I thought it was great the way he rattled off a number of those issues that are going to be primary issues in this election, not only abortion, gun control, Medicare, prescription drug costs. I think that's exactly where he needs to be. And I think that's exactly what will dispel, questions about mental acuity. I think the way he rattled that off was perfect. And I think he's obviously able to do that in real time. You can't read off or teleprompter, things that are responsive like that. This is where I think he's at his best, and I hope that the campaign continues to put him in circumstances where he can show just what he's able to do. I thought that was much more effective than what I've seen recently.
Yeah, Michael, and pretty charming there. Back to the audience saying, I shouldn't show you my back. I learned that growing up, making the crowd laugh. Pretty on fire, Michael.
And the crowd responded, "We've got your back. We've got your back." So he's here in my city, Detroit. He's at Renaissance High School. Looks like a great turnout. I know some people that are there. But this is Joe Biden in retail politics. When I was on the show back on Friday, June 28th, we know that was the day after he did the interview with George Stephanopoulos. We know that day he was speaking in Raleigh, North Carolina. Fantastic turnout, a lot of energy. He's showing it right here as well. And, now you're going to have the detractors, some of these punk ass Democrats who are asking him to step aside. They're going to say, oh, he's reading from a teleprompter. Well, presidents often read from teleprompters. OK, so when did being able not to read from a teleprompter become a criteria to become president? And they don't say the same thing about Donald Trump. OK, Donald Trump reads from teleprompters. He sounds crazy. When the teleprompter goes down, he sounds crazy. They don't hold Donald Trump to that same standard. So, yes, this is good. And he's talking about issues and talk more about those kitchen table issues like the Congressional Black Caucus was talking about as well. Wages increasing. Wages have been increasing, outpacing inflation. We just got the news also that inflation has cooled down some more. The Federal Reserve is looking at lowering interest rates to the next month or two, possibly, something like that. So talk about those economic issues and your successes in saving the economy. They have a fantastic record, okay? 15 million jobs, 5 million net jobs, 2.6 million jobs for African Americans, 40 straight months of private sector job growth, 40 straight months of unemployment rate at 4% or lower. They have a fantastic record, $16 billion for HBCUs. African American household net worth increased by 60% under Biden-Harris. And then compare that, because elections are about contrast. Compare that to the other guy. 16 economic laureates, Nobel Prize-winning economists have reviewed Biden's plan, economic plan, and said it will grow the economy. They said Donald Trump's plan will cause a recession. But people think Donald Trump is so good with the economy. No, he's not. He's a fraud.
All right. And you know what? On the final note, I'm going to give it to you, Matt, before we get out of here. He mentioned, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land. I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds on this as we get out of here on Friday night. Very strategic there, picking up on what the Vice President Kamala Harris has been saying and has been campaigning for. And a real connection of the dots there, I think. Very intentional and strategic.
I think so as well. And it's very good to leverage because Trump has hemmed and hawed on that and talking about he's going to leave it to the states. I mean, it's very clear he does not have clear policy. He's not qualified to be the president. And I think when Mr. Biden is able to very clearly speak to exactly what they're going to do, it creates that contrast that Michael was talking about and assures voters that he is the person who needs to be there for the next 4 years.
All right. Michael and Matt, as always, good to see you. We figured out some world problems here tonight, and I couldn't have done it without you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Candace. Great job.
All right. Good to see you, and enjoy your weekend. All right. And to everybody else, enjoy your weekend. We will probably have Roland back in this seat on Monday. Hope he's also going to have a good weekend himself. I'm Candace Kelly. Thanks for joining us here on the Black Star Network on Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, good feeling.